Hey, what's up everyone? Today I am testing my new resin 3D printer. So this model is called the Elfin and it's made by Nova 3D. So when I got the package, compared to other printers that I've gotten, the package was really small. And also the package itself was pretty beat. Like it was being thrown around by the carriers. When I opened the box, I realized that the printer itself was really well packaged. It had a lot of foam to cover it and protect it from any damages during transportation. So inside of the package, there was a small brown box, a black box, which I assume was the resin because it was black to prevent it from being cured from the UV light. There was also a funnel, there was an envelope, there was a power cord, a USB, a spatula, a little tool set, a little spray bottle, some cutters, some filter cones, and some gloves. These were great because I didn't have any sitting around. Since this was my first resin 3D printer, I wanted to test it in a different way. I wanted to test it with the least amount of care as possible. I know that's kind of dumb for me to say, but the reason why I was doing that was because I want to know how the regular consumer would react to a printer, or how the actual printer would react to a regular consumer. And by a regular consumer, I mean I didn't know anything about the printer. I didn't know anything about resin printing. I know about 3D printing, but I didn't know anything about resin printing. So I didn't make any research. I just went in, I opened the box, and I was waiting for the box to help me and guide me to actually use this thing, which is what I think the average consumer does. What I would have done in another place would have been, I would have tried to find as much information as possible from all kinds of sources so I can know what I'm dealing with, so I can probably get better results. So assembling the printer is actually really easy. You just pretty much have to put the cover on, plug in the cord, turn it on, put the resin, and load the file. It's pretty simple. Now that sounds really simple. I guess the more technical part is actually creating the file that you're gonna print. And at that point, once the printer was assembled, that pretty much took maybe about 15 minutes to get everything out and putting it in the box, just knowing how it was supposed to be. So once I was ready to start printing, I realized that I had to download the software to actually slice the models. And at first I thought this was gonna be complicated. I have to learn a new software. How is this gonna work? But once the software was downloaded, it took really a couple minutes, installed it into my computer, load up a file, and I said, okay, now it's time to move from your average consumer, which will probably print a small piece. I wanted to go and print the smallest model that I had made. And that model was my alien princess xenomorph, which I had previously made a second head for it. And at this point, I didn't print this piece before because I didn't have access to a resin printer. It's a very small piece. It's the smallest piece that I had modeled. And again, I didn't print this before because I felt like I wasn't gonna get a good result. So that was gonna be my first print. I wanted to see how that was gonna come out and see if this thing can do something for me. Once the printer finished, it took about an hour and 30 minutes. You can't really see the part if it's really small because the printer is still holding resin, or the file, the print itself still holds some resin around it. Of course, it's fluid and resin is very sticky, and not just sticky, and the consistency is somewhat thick, so it sticks to the model itself. So it was time to go back to the instructions, and in the instructions itself, they were pretty straightforward. It says clean the model with alcohol and clean your build plate with alcohol. So what I did was I took off the model from the build plate, which was super easy, and I didn't even use the spatula, to be honest. It just came straight off. I did have to apply a little bit of maybe strength, other than not something that I'm used to with removing supports, because on PLA, but the print itself came off really easy. And at that point, what I did was I put a little bit of alcohol in a small little container, and I put the printed part inside of the alcohol. And once that went into the alcohol, I saw that the excess of the resin was pretty much being diluted by the water, and I was getting that final piece that or at least that shape that I was looking for, because again, that shape wasn't there. There was just fluid around it, and I couldn't distinguish any shape. Once the part went into the alcohol, I saw the detail and I was mind blown. Shortly after that, I realized, due to the small size of that part, I had lost it already, and I hadn't even printed the rest of the model. So it was time to set up a new print. And in this time, I was gonna print multiple parts. I wanted to see how that was gonna react, because FDM has also its pros and cons when you're printing multiple parts. So I wanted to put that to the test as well here. And I was ready to start printing something larger, which I went for the actual head, the complete head, and I printed all 3 parts in one single print. Once the part was clean with alcohol and dry, it was time to apply some primer and try to post-process this and see how the post-processing is gonna work. If by the time I was applying primer, there was gonna be, you know, some other issues I didn't know of. I just wanted to see how my final results were going to be, because for me, it's not just about printing, it's about post-processing, because I wanna have a final result, a final model, and I wanna do as much as I can so I can have the best result as possible. The post-processing was super easy. If I remove the supports differently, maybe with a small tool, I won't have that issue where it leaves a small hole because the support is removing a part of the print. I think that it will just be a matter of sanding it, which is what I've seen in some of the work of some of my friends online and so on. Again, I have never done that. So to me, that was good that this happened in the first print, because that way I know if this was gonna be for me or not. With FDM, you have to sand the part itself to make it smooth. And with this, I just had to fix those connections, because the rest of the model was completely flawless. There was no layer lines, or at least not any visible to me. Since the model has some texture itself, if there was any layer lines, they completely blended with the texture of the model, which is not something that I had seen even with like the highest detail on my FDM prints. So the fact that I was able to fix that with that small amount of work, it was really good for me, and I just felt really confident that future work was just gonna be that easy as well, and I was just gonna be happy with my results. The resin is super easy to sand, so in case I have to do any post-processing, is really good. That's another really good thing that I noticed. So basically, the post-processing on this printer is really easy, and that's if you mess up the part itself, like I did with the supports damaging the actual print. If you do it probably on a smarter way or with more experience, you probably get a better result, and you probably won't even have to add 2 to 3 coats of primer. You're probably gonna be good with your first one. Once the piece was completely post-processed, and it was now I wanted to see how it was gonna look with the rest of the model. So I put it together, and there's a huge difference between the parts. Not only because one is much heavier because it's resin, and the other one is just a hollow FDM PLA print. The texture itself is just unbelievable. The detail that it has, it's just mind-blowing. So At that point, I realized that I had to change the way I am making my prints, because now I have other tools, and pretty much this is the tool, and depending on how you use it, that's the result that you're gonna get. So I know for a fact that now I need to enhance my skills. My level of detail on my models needs to go higher now because I have better tools, of course. So overall, my experience with the printer was super easy. I don't think it's hard at all. I was expecting it to be more difficult. I was expecting, because of my past experience with other printers, and those were supposedly more accessible, like an FDM printer. I thought it would, in my head, for some reason, I thought that should be easier, at least for the consumer. But I don't think so. Just changing the PLA strings on some printers is just so hard. And here you just have to pour the resin. Maybe I'm going over my head. Maybe I don't know what I'm getting into. But based on my experience and other printers that I've used, that it took me sometimes even days to actually get a good result, I got a good result without even knowing what I was doing, without even having experience in 3D printing with this thing. Some of the questions that I have to ask myself with the printer itself, if I was watching this and I was having a conversation with someone, would be, are you happy with it? Fuck yes. Is it what you thought? No. It's much more. It's actually way much more than I was expecting, completely. And my expectations came from price, from it's made in China. There's not a lot of marketing for it. It's not a big brand. It's not a big corporation. So that subconsciously create expectations on any consumer. And to me, my expectations were low. And probably that's why I'm happy. I don't know. But I just haven't seen this before. Even on groups and even on stuff online, I don't see people saying, what a fucking flawless print at the first try. So another question I would ask myself would be, is it a good buy? Fuck yes. My first printer was almost $200 and it was a piece of shit. It was an FDM printer, and at the time, resin printers, I remember looking at printers for $2,000–$3,000, and I was like, I would never be able to afford those things just to play around, just to have it at home. That was just never gonna be in my budget. I'm very excited to make more models. I'm very excited to continue working with this and look at other resins, dive more into resin 3D printing. So for me, this was an absolute journey into a new world that has opened my eyes into new possibilities. That's the way I see it. So if anyone is looking to get into resin 3D printing, and if they're wondering whether what I recommend is, absolutely yes. Not only based on the price, but based on my experience, based on the results that I got. And sure, this was just the first try, but for me, that's just more than enough. Hopefully this was as interesting for you as it was for me, and maybe you learned something along the way. Thank you guys for stopping by. I'll see you guys next time.